Hello and welcome to Module Number 2, Job Descriptions, Professional Responsibilities, and Administrative Evaluation as part of the 640 Leadership, Curriculum Development, and Supervision class. My name is Chris Sadler. I'm the Director of Human Resources for the Sun Prairie Area School District currently. And just a little bit about myself before we get going with the learning through this module. I grew up in Heartland, Wisconsin, went to Heartland Arrowhead outside in Waukesha County. I started my education career teaching kindergarten for 10 years outside of the city of Atlanta in one of the largest school districts in the country called Gwinnett County Public Schools. And that was an experience that I will never forget. I was one of 17 kindergarten teachers in the same K through 5 school. So obviously the school was about 1,500 students or so, very large school, but I learned a ton because I was around teachers all the time. And I had a principal that, even with all those staff members, did such a wonderful job of creating relationships that kind of spurred me on to become a principal. And then in moving back to Wisconsin to get closer to family, I was an elementary principal in a few districts, the Nakusa School District in central Wisconsin. Then I moved back down to the Madison area with my wife and children to Marshall, and I was there for 5 years at the Early Learning Center. And then I was able to get the opportunity to be a principal at C.H. Bird Elementary School in Sun Prairie. Each school that I worked in were Title I schools. It was just something that I was always drawn to. And then at the end of the 2015 school year, I was given the opportunity to start thinking about human resources, and I learned through our current director at that point. And then as I went through that learning, I was given the opportunity to be the director of human resources in the 2018 school year. And that's where I've been ever since, and I've learned a lot then. Just a quick piece around the slideshow. You'll see different colored text and underlines, and I just wanted to talk to you about those really quickly. Any text that is underlined in blue and will have a link to the resources portion of the student dashboard. What that means is it'll just show you that those resources that are there are in your dashboard, and it will be included in your dashboard as well. Resources will be either downloadable documents or web page links, and the recommendation for me is always to download all documents and begin keeping them in folders for future reference, not just for the class, but actually for when you get into the position and maybe already in a position of some sort around school leadership, that you can reference back the articles, because I think many of them have great information that you'll use for years to come. And again, not only will this slideshow be done through this way with recording, but it'll also be included in your resources as just a standalone PowerPoint that you can access some of the links through. So just a quick quote to get us started off. The kind of schools to which we'd be proud to send our own kids are the ones we should be working daily to create. And obviously, as you look at job descriptions and what you're expected to do in each one of the positions, every one of them is connected to how we go about creating schools that every child can learn every day at high levels. And the resource connection here is to an author and previous school administrator, Jimmy Casas, who can help help us along this way in making sure that we are keeping high expectations for all kids. So I'm going to go through an introduction to administration through job description evaluations, looking at kind of annual calendars for those positions and professional organizations that are connected to each one of those positions. And as Casas talks about here, we are blessed every day with an opportunity to help change the course of someone's life with our words, our actions, and our belief in their abilities. By changing our perspectives, you can change lives. And that's what your main job as any school leader throughout it is, to constantly, again, change those perspectives to make sure that every child has been given the opportunity to achieve at high levels. And what we're going to be talking about a lot is about disposition versus skill set, and we'll be referencing that in the next couple slides. So we have many certifications in this class. Each one is unique by itself, but it's interconnected. So we are going to examine the principal job description, the superintendent job description, the school business administrator job description, director of instruction, director of special education and pupil services, which are all represented in our class in 640. Please see the session 2 resources in the student account for job descriptions and administrative responsibilities. One thing that I always say about job descriptions in these roles is you would think that each district sees them similarly, like as their expectations are. But what I found is job descriptions can vary widely and are not always accurate. So what I always say is ask questions. So if you're interviewing for a position or been offered a position and you have a job description in front of you that is older, kind of like the one I'm going to look at here in a minute, ask questions and say, like, is this still a responsibility of this role? Or I thought that this role had this responsibility. Does your district expect the same? Those job descriptions can tell you a lot about what the school district and school board thinks about a certain position and the importance of that position and how it can affect change depending on how they describe it. So always look at those very carefully. So as we look at a typical job description, most of them include essential job duties, responsibilities, the minimal educational and experience requirements, and the description of dispositions that are desired. Like I said in the previous slide, always look at the date revised to see if you need to ask more questions with job interview or acceptance of the position. As you can see, this is not a great example of an up-to-date one. This one was from Sun Prairie, and this is last revised in February 24th, 2014. This is our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning. This is just the quick version, obviously, but you can see that the summary kind of talks about what the position is about, and then there's essential duties and responsibilities. My feeling is when you're looking at job descriptions, if you're in a role where your job is to revise them, you should have a cycle, like every other year. Certain groups are looked at, teachers, administrators, and then support staff, and it just keeps going around in that cycle. So at least once every 2 to 3 years, they're looked at again to make sure they're as up to date as possible. We're in the middle of that. We just hadn't had that system before, and I'm trying to put that in now. But what I would encourage you to do right now is to look in the resources of your dashboard on the Educate website and look at some of those job descriptions, because many of them will fit the positions you're either currently in and you're working towards certification in, or you're working towards certification in general. So take a look at them. They are not all encompassing. The one thing I will say is, again, depending on the school district and the size of your school district, the job descriptions might look very, very different. When I was principal in Nakusa and Marshall, pretty much I was also directing special education, instruction, and everything in between, because districts that are smaller aren't going to have all the positions at the administrative level of director of instruction, sometimes not even having a business services because the superintendent will be that. So a lot of the times, depending on the size of the district, your role might look a little different, even though the title is the same from district to district. One thing that I truly believe in with when you're looking at school leadership is to understand the difference between disposition and skill set. The article that is in resources that's around dispositions of school leaders is really focused on principals, but what I want to talk about first is to see how that article actually spans out for all school leaders, because it's very true for all. The disposition is defined as a person's inherent qualities of mind and character, whereas a skill set is more of a person's range of skills or abilities. So I see those two things as separate, but also connected. When you're thinking about disposition, you're thinking about how a person carries themselves and their internal core values. And the one thing you want to do is figure out what you truly believe in. What are your core values? Because when you, as you know, if you're a teacher currently or some type of administrator, within a district, if your core values don't match with your district's vision and mission, it's very difficult to work in. And it becomes to a point where you're either going to burn yourself out, or you're going to become very frustrated and not really enjoy what you're doing. So you want to be able to understand that very clearly. The Strengths Finder that you took does help with that, understand that, but constantly reassess what you believe, because it will change obviously as your career goes on and the experiences you have. But does it match with the current district you're in or the district you're looking at being a part of? Very important in my mind. And what I'm saying down at the bottom there is like, what matters when you're finding it is that the simple answer is yes, all these things need to match, but it's complex work on your part. Is I need to know the vision and mission of this school district. Does that actually match with what I believe both now and into the future? Do my core values match the leadership that's currently there and how the district is moving forward? And you can find those things on district websites, but I would say ask that question when you're actually working through the interview process or even within a district. What are the core values of this organization? And then what is the long-term plan for the organization too? You're going to want to know that. So again, if you're in that position for the long term, am I going to be able to grow with this district? Or is this a district going in a direction that I'm not sure I really feel like I can see myself being a part of in the long term? To me, all of this is so important to think through, because you don't want to put yourself in a position again where you're going to burn yourself out, or you're going to get to the point where a frustrational level happens and you're just not enjoying it. And to me, as a school leader, it's even more important just because you are making decisions and being a part of decisions that you have to truly believe in. Now, when we look at a skill set, to me, that's like what a person brings into the position as from what they've learned in the past. What are the professional development that you've taken part of? Is it you went to college again to get another degree, or the professional element that you've been involved with other districts? What is that skill set that you bring? What are you good at? And what are some things that you want to get better at? And maybe that's where this new district, if you're looking at it, will help you get better at whatever area you're looking at. So those skill sets are important to your overall success. But to me, when you're thinking through this, disposition is the ultimate importance of, do I match? Because most people going into school leadership are very driven and want to learn more about how to do their job better. But you have to make sure your core values match in order to make that a real successful relationship with the district you work with. And just to quickly reference and go a little deeper into the article that's linked in your resources, and it is a web page. The article focuses on the concept of what principals need in order to be successful based on their research. But to me, when you read the article, it's a very short, easy read. The concepts are true for all school leaders. The mindset, disposition, and practice must hinge on the following pieces. To me, is the belief that all students can learn at high levels, and it's referenced in that article too. And that's the first piece, is if that is in place, then you can kind of fall in these other areas. Collaboration is key to overall success, and that's not just collaboration between teachers, it's collaboration between teachers and parents, between teachers and support staff, between teachers and administration, between administration and administration. There's so many pieces to that, and you have to have that belief of, I need other people to do my job well. And a lot of the times what you're constantly trying to find is, who are the people that are strongest in my organization at a certain skill or have a certain disposition that will really work well when you're working towards a certain goal, either short-term or long-term, and then lean on them. You do not need to know everything as an administrator. I think that is a big fallacy that I think when people go into principalship, sometimes teachers and staff are like, okay, well now this person knows everything. you do not. And I'm sure many of you have gone through that before. I realized really quickly when I became a principal, all these things that I thought I knew, I didn't know much at all. And I have to be willing to learn and know where my area of learning needs to take place and find people that can help me do that, or have such a high skill level in an area that I'm not as good at it that I can collaborate with them and help them grow their own leadership in it. And I think that's a very humbling experience, as many of you probably have gone through or will go through. Any decision that you make should always be connected to the priorities defined as important through a strategic plan or the vision and mission of a district. Everyone needs to see how every decision connects to that. Sometimes they aren't always going to agree with the decision, but if they see the why behind it and that it is connected to, past decisions and future goals, people will move along, even if they don't agree with it on the front end. No one will have all the dispositions as described as I talked, but the belief is that anybody can be coached through effective feedback. And again, it kind of goes back to the first few dispositions, and that is that all students can learn and collaboration is key. And if you have those two dispositions or beliefs, you can be coached and other people can be coached to continue to improve their own dispositions and improve their own skill set for long-term success. Now, there is a lot of professional organizations out there that support school leaders. These are just an example of some of them. We have our own Association of Wisconsin School Administrators. We have the Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators here, school board. Those are all the local Wisconsin ones, but obviously we do have national ones as well for each one of these organizations. I highly recommend that you become a part of those. Many of those, if you're not in a position of principal or superintendent or any of those, do have aspiring administrator programs that I would highly recommend to be a part of. Sometimes they're free, sometimes they have like $100 fee, but they get you into workshops that you can really learn a lot from for specific job titles within school administrators. So I just recommend that you do some exploring with these and see if you can be a part of some of their aspiring programs, aspiring superintendent, aspiring principal, whatever it might be. And it will really help you, one, is learn more about the position, but then two, if you can go to some of their workshops that are free for a lot of the aspiring administrators, if they join the program, you can start interconnecting and doing some networking within people that already do the position. And then when you do step into the position, what I've always found is that building those relationships before really help you when you're in it, because then you can call somebody to ask a question on a specific topic. So I highly recommend being a part of any professional organization that's out there, because they do really make a difference. So organization, it's kind of like school leadership 101. To me, it's your disposition, your skill set really fits within this. So everyone, how they organize their day, how they organize their week, month, and long-term year and beyond is all based on your own disposition. But obviously, there are vision and missions that each district has. And I would like to call them like the big rocks. And that's the ones that are highly important to your district, whatever that might be. It might be, culturally responsive instruction. It might be long-term college and career readiness, which everyone has that goal, but maybe there's something specific to your district in their strategic plan around a specific goal or topic going into the future for your K-12 or for K-12 system. So when I look at that, I think about those as big rocks. Now, there's resources that we have. Obviously there is the DPI calendar. It talks about due dates on specific reports that might be involved with each one of your roles, which again, I highly encourage you to begin to explore and ask your cooperating administrator about, like, what are the things that you have to do throughout the year and that you have to plan for. Assessment and accountability is a big piece of that, depending on the role you play. If you're a director of student services or special education, there's obviously a ton of accountability around IEP development and IEP completion and IEP goal setting. Get to know those. Ask your cooperating administrator, explore the DPI site, and really dig in through that. When you're working with your calendar, it will be amazing, and many of you probably have found this, is that what you write on your calendar, when you really look at it from maybe a higher level, it will amaze you on the values that are shown through that, because your calendar typically shows your value and what you value. If your calendar is filled up with a lot of different meetings around small things where you're kind of micromanaging issues, it will show that you're micromanaging and you're not focusing on the bigger piece. Because I would say that my hardest transition from being in the classroom to an administrator was the idea that I need to know what's going on, but I can't be caught up in the minutia of everything. I need to know it, but I can't spend calendar and time and hours on the minutia. I have to look at the bigger picture and understand, how do I set up my people to be successful, and then let them be successful. And I think your calendar will show that. The one thing that I think that I've always recommended people to do in school leadership is actually calendarize your work time. There are times where you can get caught up in the day-to-day. So as a principal, things come through your door all day, every second, every minute. If you let that drive how you lead, the every day, every minute, every second information that's coming through your door, you will have a really hard time of looking at the big picture and connecting where you need to get to, because you will get caught up in the day-to-day, and by the end of the year, you'll wonder what just happened. So I highly recommend that any role you have in school leadership is that you block off time in your calendar to work on planning, to work on goals, to work on understanding where is my staff at right now and what do they need to be successful at the next step. Because if you do not take that time, it will get away on you fast and you'll have to retrace anyways. So, let your administrative assistant, if you have one, know that, from 2 to 4, I am working on this. And please try to keep that time focused on that for me, because your administrative assistant can really help you do that. Or if you don't have one, you do that on your own and say, this time to this time, I am going to be working on a specific piece. And if you have Gmail, it does allow you to pause email, because email, again, it's just like those people walking through the door asking, can I have a minute? If you don't pause that email and you constantly check it, you can go down that rabbit hole and get lost and stop doing what you were working on, which in the end actually has more impact on the long term than answering that email the second it comes to your inbox. So there's a lot of things that you can look at organization, but always look at your calendar and find out what the big rocks are and make sure the work that you put on your calendar connects with those big rocks. There are weeks and months where that's a struggle because something might catch on fire, not literally, hopefully, but something will be on fire and you feel like that has to take precedence, which it does when it's safety or something going on in the community that's really affecting how kids are coming to school. Yes, that has to be your top priority. However, you can't lose sight of the long-term picture, because once you lose sight of that, it will get away on you fast. So again, it kind of goes back. This is just a reiteration of what I was saying to make sure that it's clear. When you're looking at like organizational rules, plan out each day with the following in mind: your vision, your mission, your short-term goals leading to long-term goals. And just know, just like we know, is that most days your plan actually won't work, but you have to continue to move forward. So if you plan out that work time, from 2 to 4, and something happens in 2 to 4 that you have to address, go back to that. Just take a second and say, okay, so I planned on doing this. When can I now work on that or work that into my schedule in the coming days? Because again, you don't want to lose that work time that was going to lead towards long-term success. And again, every day you unfortunately will look at your calendar and say, oh my gosh, I didn't get to this, and maybe more of other things that will affect you mentally. You'll say, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? You just have to continue to come back. What is most important? What are my priorities? How does this fit in your vision and mission? Where are my work towards short-term and long-term goals? And continue to work that in. You will have a lot of erasing and you will have a lot of crossing out of things because things happen in any role of school leadership. And you just have to know that, be flexible, and continue to move forward, but always keep sight of that vision and mission that you need to follow, either as your school mission and vision or your school district mission and vision, or both. So moving on to administrator evaluations. This next section will look a little bit closer at administrator evaluations. I highly recommend that you connect with your cooperating administrator and ask him or her for their own evaluation, not the one that was filled out unless they want to, but just a blank copy of it to see how your district goes about that for different roles. Now, many of them will work with the DPI model for principals, but outside of that, with other directors and superintendents, it might look very different. So it might be very interesting to look at and understand what will be expected when you step into a position like that. So to start off, just some really basics about how different roles are evaluated. When you look at director of curriculum and instruction, most of the time, a role like that is based on job description. And as you can see, there's other roles like that too. The director of special education, school business administrator, superintendent, they're all based on the job description or the local circumstances. And when I say local circumstances, it's how the school board has moved forward with wanting to understand how to evaluate a person doing those positions. There is models out there for each of those, but typically you will see a variance between school districts because, again, it'll depend on the demographics of the school district as far as racial, socioeconomic, those types of demographics within a community. It will also depend on the size of your community. Your superintendent might be rolled up into directing business and finance, director of instruction, and special ed, doing all of those roles. Other districts, the superintendent is very much at the higher level, which means they are working with the board, giving direction to directors and principals, but basically then being the face of the district outside of that. So it all depends on many different pieces. And what I would encourage you to do is there will be examples in your resources, but also the principle itself, there is a DPI evaluation model for that those links will be in the resources as well. But what I highly encourage you to do, again, is your cooperating administrator is so important in your growth over the next year and a half or so. Ask them, can I have a blank form for your evaluation? Because you want to see what it looks like from your local district and see if it actually matches with what they do. It's a great question to ask. So to ask them, so when you have your evaluation conversation, do the things you're getting evaluated on actually match with what you're doing? You'll be surprised with people's answers. Sometimes, amazingly, it is highly connected. Most of the time, it isn't always connected, and people have to tweak it to match what actually is happening in their position. So here's just an example of the one that we use here in Sun Prairie. Basically, it starts off with just a cover page, talks about the 3 parts of our evaluation: the goals and special projects, the job description evaluation tool, and then just fundamental job skill performance. And I'll walk through those in the next couple slides. So the first one we do, and not all districts do this, but I feel like it's important because if an evaluation is truly tied to the strategic plan, your goals and projects need to match that as well. So when you look at this, what you're going to see is our administrators at the director level have to create a goal or project. Typically, we have a school score or a school district scorecard, which is really our strategic plan. Most of their projects are right in that already. So they just link their strategic plan into this, and we find out, where that person has made progress towards the end of the year once we meet with them in the beginning, middle, and end of the year, much like you do with teachers. This is not the whole job description of the elementary director of education, but what we did was kind of referencing back to some of my other comments, is that a lot of times evaluations aren't tied directly to job descriptions. Sometimes it's all disposition, which is fine if that's the vision and mission of a district and they value disposition over anything else. That's fine. But the way we've done it is we really want to make sure our job descriptions match the position. And the one way we thought would match the position well is if we actually took every one of the bullet points out of the responsibilities of the job description and actually evaluated the person on that. So as you can see, there's a myriad of different labels here, but we wanted to make sure the job description was very active in the evaluation process. And you can see these points here are then rated on the right with a 1 through 5 model, people are evaluated strictly on their evaluation or on their job description at that point. And then ours is the fundamental job skill performance is more focused on disposition, because we do value that as well. We just wanted to have an actual match with the job description skills and then the dispositions that are there. And as you can see, these 6 points here are pretty much based on your disposition. Do you follow through on your responsibilities? Do you have a well-working relationship with other professionals and employees that you work with? Do you understand how to carry out your job? Do you work effectively with groups and teams? Are you dependable? So a lot of those things are very fundamental to your disposition. Now, when you're thinking about how to organize all of this, we've talked about how to organize your day. We've talked about long-term and short-term goals. How does evaluation fit into that? How do you evaluate others, and how does that fit into your quarterly calendar? Now, evaluation of others, that will be a further module down the road here, but just really basically, as you look at your calendar, you're almost going to want to look at it in a quarterly way. And it's like, what do you need to learn over the next quarter in order to do your job successfully and meet the goals that you've set, both short-term and long-term? Who are you going to supervise and evaluate? This is such an important piece of your calendar that can easily get lost very quickly. And it's amazing. Every piece of research shows that an organization that provides their employees with timely and critical feedback have overall success. But then the flip side of that is people get very busy in their day-to-day, let the day-to-day kind of run their calendar, that supervision and evaluation actually ends up taking a back seat. So as you're going into these programs as you're going through this learning with your cooperating administrator, ask them how they organize their supervision and evaluation calendar, not just for teachers, but for support staff and everybody else. Because the one thing we found, again, is that supervision and evaluation provides feedback that people, even if it's feedback that is showing them that they need to work on things or they need to grow or improve, People appreciate that because it shows that the leader cares about them and they feel valued at that point. So take time to make sure that's on your calendar. Obviously, how will you be evaluated? You're going to want to know that and the timelines between that and how that works in your calendar. How do I get my goals attained? So my evaluation is tied into those, and I can provide evidence that I am working towards the goals that we've set. Just like before with your day-to-day, what are your big rocks? What are the strategies and actions that you're responsible for, and how does that fit in your calendar? If your calendar, again, is filled up with meetings on minutia, which you'll learn as you grow, like what is highly important and what's something that just needs to be quickly talked about or delegated to somebody else. Your calendar is important to look at. And as you're working again with your corporate administrator, ask them if you can see their calendar, or work with them in understanding how they prioritize their days and calendarize their professional life. So, all does this kind of connect with if you've landed a new job, now what? The one thing that I want you to think about is it goes back to the calendar. Now, this is kind of an offshoot topic within all these other topics that have been covered in this module, but it's just something to think about. Since we've been talking about calendar and organizing your time, if and when you are in school administration and school leadership, you're going to want an entry plan. Now, there are examples in your resources, again, of entry plans. What I would highly recommend is when you go into a position, think about the first 100 days or the first 90 days, whatever you want to look at. Some people split it up by 30, 60, 90, and then go out from there. Whatever works for you, but you want to get in there and have a plan. A lot of people will say, well, I just want to build relationships, which is important. And that can be definitely part of your 30, 60, 90 plan or 100-day plan. However, people also need to see action and to see, like, what is this person actually about? So those little decisions that you think about are going to be highly important. The unfortunate thing about school leadership that I've found is that the decisions you make in the first 100 days or first year of your work in that position, people remember. And if you take those decisions thoughtfully, even if they're small decisions, and you take them thoughtfully, their mindset will be like, oh, this leader really thinks through their decisions and makes sure that all perspectives are taken into account, and they make sure that it best supports kids in the end to help them be successful. If you go into a decision and the staff perceives it as this person is just making the decision because they like this, or they didn't take people's into perspective, they'll remember that. So have a plan going in that helps you learn about the organization and make simple decisions in a way that matches that mission and vision of the district, but also shows a little bit about yourself and how you go about making decisions. So think about those entry plans. Don't just go in there with, I'm going to build relationships. Very important, like I said. However, you need to have somewhat of a plan about what is it that I actually need to accomplish here so people can see me as a competent leader. A good plan also is to talk with your supervisor at that point and say, what is it that you think I should be doing in the first 100 days? They might know something about your school or your district that will help you make a decision right off the bat that will help all employees see that you care and you take their thoughts into consideration. So somebody that might be on staff already might know that, and it might not be a supervisor. You might ask some staff members through like welcoming or greeting small group discussions, which I've done before. Is I invited employees in 3 to 4 at a time and said, can you tell me about the school or the district, and say, what is it that is going really well? What's something that could be improved? when you talk to your employees, you'll get it quickly, an understanding of what's happening, and they will tell you. And at that point, understanding their perspective really helps when you make decisions in those first 100 days or first year on your job. So we've reached the end of this module. Congratulations. Please contact me if you have any questions, or you can go on a private discussion on Educate, and feel free to contact me. My cell phone is there. If you're using text messages, include your name because I won't know who it is. So just feel free to do that either way if something comes up along the way. And thanks for listening.